Within the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington is a very small unit that does a big job. The World Agricultural Outlook Board is a unit of the USDA's Office of the Chief Economist. On Wednesday of this week, the World Board released its latest monthly report, a document known as the World Agricultural Supply and Demand Estimates. Each month's report is important to farmers in Mississippi and other states, but it also forms the framework for more than 100 other outlook-oriented reports coming out of the USDA. When the report was released on September 10, 2004, Farm Week was on hand in Washington, D.C., so you could see how it comes together each month. World Agricultural Supply and Demand Estimates is a monthly report released at the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington. It is a forecast of supply and demand for major commodities at the world level and for livestock products and refined sugar at the U.S. level. It is compiled and produced by a USDA unit known as the World Agricultural Outlook Board, or WAOB. Gerald Bangy is the chairperson and oversees the operation.
Basically, the world has become very, very small in terms of agricultural trade. So that what happens in China, what happens in Australia, what happens anywhere in the world impacts farmers here. The intent of the report is to show U.S. farmers and U.S. policymakers and U.S. traders exactly what's going on in the world at that moment in time, what we think the outlook is.
With a staff of less than 30 people, the World Agricultural Outlook Board does its work through interagency committees like this that are staffed with representatives from other USDA agencies. This is the Cotton Estimates Committee, which includes 3 analysts from the Foreign Agricultural Service and a representative from the Economic Research Service. There is one committee for each commodity area included in the monthly report, and each committee is chaired by a WAOB analyst. The committees compile and interpret a variety of information from a number of other sources, both within and beyond the USDA, leading up to each report.
Precipitation has been near normal, generally good, favorable pattern for winter grain development.
24 hours before release time for the monthly report, Chairperson Gerald Bangy convenes a production meeting of all the committee chairs in the WAOB boardroom. Because weather is one of the key factors affecting crop prospects and prices, the meeting begins with a briefing on conditions in Australia and other countries from an agricultural meteorologist. Weather conditions around the world, such as the approach of Hurricane Ivan to the U.S. mainland in September 2004, are constantly monitored and summarized for the committee chairs from this joint agricultural weather facility housed at the USDA.
Well, typically we analyze the weather and provide a briefing to the economic analysts regarding any impacts that weather may have on their numbers for their supply and demand estimates.
Also considered again by the committee chairs at the production meeting before release day are any attaché reports from the USDA Foreign Agricultural Service, as well as Landsat satellite analyses available for various countries from FAS. And helping the chair stay on top of relevant current events throughout each month is an in-house daily newsletter summarizing any changes in foreign ag policy and trade from around the world.
Reuters and the Dow Jones Newswire are the backbone of the service. I also go out on the internet as kind of in between and use newspaper sources that are primarily farm related and have news that would help us.
Down the hallway outside Charlie Wilbur's 4th floor office in the USDA South Building, the process of making part of the WAOB suite a restricted area begins after lunch on the afternoon before the report release. The report is prepared in secured lock-up conditions to ensure its integrity and prevent the premature release of its information. Opaque vinyl shades with steel reinforcers are drawn over each window in this area and sealed. The same process takes place 1 floor above in part of the offices of the National Agricultural Statistics Service, where the monthly crop production report is prepared and released at the same time as world supply and demand. While there is heightened security surrounding the release of not only the world supply and demand reports but the crop production reports, these main doors are locked at all times due to the sensitive nature of the other reports being prepared on a weekly basis. A properly coded USDA identification badge is needed for any person to open the electronic lock and gain access to the area. By midnight, 8½ hours before report release time, the final lockup security procedure is in place in the South Building. All telephone and internet hookups in the lockup area have been disconnected. World Agricultural Outlook Board and National Agricultural Statistics Service personnel return to work and enter through the lockup entrance on the 5th floor, where an armed guard is now stationed. He collects all wireless telephones from those who enter. From this time until report release, there is absolutely no outside communication. At 12:15 a.m., National Agricultural Statistics Service staff convene in the board analysis room on the 5th floor to finalize the corn, soybean, and cotton forecast for their crop production report and for use by the WAOB. By 3 a.m., the job is finished, and NASS personnel physically hand off the speculative forecast down to the 4th floor and the World Agricultural Outlook Board through a special staircase within the lockup area. Here, NASS National Cotton Statistician Troy Joshua is delivering the cotton numbers to WAOB Fibers analyst Carol Skelly, chair of the Interagency Cotton Estimates Committee.
Here are the numbers.
How did we do?
We're significantly larger than last month.
Oh my goodness, 20.9. Yeah, that'll be a surprise.
With the numbers for each of their respective commodities in hand, each WAOB Interagency Committee begins meeting again between 3 and 5 a.m. the morning of the report release to digest the new forecast from NASS and finalize their conclusions on domestic use, imports, exports, marketing year-ending supplies, and season average prices.
We have done a lot of our foreign work in advance, not all of it. What we do today is incorporate the U.S., which, as I said, is a critical piece. And sometimes when that happens, and particularly today because we have a significant increase in the U.S. crop, that then causes us to go back, rethink the foreign estimates, and make some changes there as well.
Each interagency committee completes its individual portion of the World Agricultural Supply and Demand estimates by 5 a.m., 3½ hours before release time. Then WAOB Chairperson Jerry Bangy convenes one more production meeting of the Interagency Committee chairs to finalize the report.
We don't have any other changes recommended for this paragraph.
By 6 a.m. on the morning of release, the entire document is complete and approved. The report stays within lockup and goes up to the 5th floor for copying in the National Agricultural Statistics Service area of the South Building. Across the hall on the 5th floor, representatives of the news media are allowed into a press facility within the lockup area at 7 a.m. after they have surrendered any wireless telephones.
Once they enter that facility, they cannot leave it. We cut in that room, all of the phones are controlled in a closet that has a lock on it as well. Once they're cut at 7 o'clock, they do not get turned on again until 8:30.
Copies of the World Agricultural Supply and Demand estimates on paper and on computer diskette are given to each reporter as soon as they are ready. This allows the reporters for organizations such as Reuters, Bloomberg, and the Wall Street Journal to have their stories and tables on the report prepared by the official release time of 8:30 a.m. Deputy Agriculture Secretary James Mosley and USDA Chief Economist Keith Collins are escorted into a briefing room within the lockup area less than 10 minutes before report release. Also on hand for the release this day as special guests are visitors from the Iowa Farm Bureau. The report is not considered official and thus cannot be officially released out of lockup until Deputy Agriculture Secretary Mosley signs the signature page. Down the hallway in the press facility, telephone and internet connections that had been disconnected earlier are turned back on just in time, 8:30 a.m.
Go!
The actual numbers and analysis of the World Agricultural Supply and Demand estimates are then released by reporters using computers and telephones. In the nearby briefing room, the Deputy Agriculture Secretary, USDA Chief Economist, and official visitors receive some analysis of what the numbers say about the various commodities from WAOB Chairperson Gerald Bangy, who's been involved with the process over 20 years.
one of the benefits of this report is they know it's prepared in a very objective manner. The people in the National Agricultural Statistics Service that do the domestic estimates are not political appointees. I am not a political appointee. The political process and the analytical process in this department are very separate. And it's done that way so that we can provide objective information to the Secretary and other policymakers. I think the rest of the world knows that, and as a result of that, they tend to use our report as the benchmark report pretty well everywhere in the world.
From Washington, D.C., I'm Leighton Spann reporting.